Some stories in history aren't just forgotten, they're deliberately buried. Today, we're talking about a story of systematic cruelty, one that wasn't carried out in the shadows, but in broad daylight, and documented with a chilling bureaucratic precision. Let's dig into how something like this was allowed to happen.
So let's start with a number 20,000. Between 1908 and 1960, that's roughly how many mixed race children vanished from the Belgian Congo. They were literally torn from their African mothers by colonial authorities, their entire lives rerouted by the state. And no, this wasn't a few isolated incidents. This was a massive state-sanctioned program. And that's the part you really have to wrap your head around. The horror of what happened was meticulously recorded. Every child taken, every mother paid off, every identity erased. It was all noted down, in careful French cursive on official forms and then filed away. This was a violence of the pen, a cruelty of the filing cabinet.
So you have to ask yourself, right? How on earth does something like this happen? Well, to understand that, you have to understand the world that created it. The deeply segregated, racially obsessed world of the Belgian Congo. A place where the very existence of certain children was seen as a problem that needed to be solved. Just look at how this ideology played out on the ground. Cities like Elizabethville were surgically divided. You had the European quarter, up on high ground with its manicured lawns and social clubs, a little fantasy of European order. And then down below in the lowlands was the Cité Indigène, the native quarter. These weren't just two neighborhoods, they were two entirely different worlds, separated by this invisible but absolutely impenetrable wall of race and power.
And right into the middle of this perfectly ordered, rigid world, a new problem pops up. Children born to Belgian men and Congolese women. The colonial administration gave them an official name, Mati. See, these children were living, breathing proof that those racial barriers weren't so solid after all. They just didn't fit. They messed up the neat social order. And for a state obsessed with control, that kind of ambiguity, well, it simply could not be tolerated.
It's easy to get lost in the big numbers and policies. But this wasn't just a system. It was something that happened to real people, one by one. And to truly get the human cost of all this, we need to focus on just one story. The story of a young woman whose child was taken and whose grief would amazingly become an act of resistance. So let me introduce you to Marie-Thérèse Kawena. In 1924, she's 19 years old, working as a servant for a Belgian mining engineer. She's educated, but trapped in a system that makes her both invisible and constantly watched. And when she became pregnant by her employer, well, guess who got blamed? It wasn't seen as the moral failing of the powerful European man. No, it was a logistical problem that she had created. She named her daughter Celeste. And for just 3 months,